engineer for renewable energy from UNDP headquarters based in Copenhagen, though they are working on renewable energy. We have invited you on this call today because we want to share with you a pilot project on green and renewable energy for the UN system. This is part of the high impact common services that are being proposed by the Business Innovation Group, and there's a drive from the UNSDG principles to move these initiatives at the country level, to pilot it as a proof of concept in certain countries, and then later on push them and scale them globally. So your countries, if you, the reason that you have received this invite is that your country teams are picked up based on various criteria that we have for selection of the countries under these pilot projects, including the maturity of your boss, the capacity of your OMT, the possibility of having these type of projects initiated at your end as part of this pilot for the renewable project or for renewable energy project. What I will do is let me ask my colleagues to share the presentation. I'll give you a very quick and brief intro to this, and then I will hand over the floor to Julia to take you through a very high level, basically brief on what is the intention of this renewable project, and then we can talk about how much we can cover as part of this project for your countries. What is happening right now is basically, I would request colleagues to mute themselves because I have an echo at this end. Okay. So out of 131 UN country teams that we have, there is at least the desire that we should move the UN operations and move the UN premises in all these locations from a traditional energy consumption system to a renewable energy, solar systems and all. Some of the agencies have already initiated independent initiatives that they have basically transitioned their offices from traditional
Nice.
I think we lost Zamir. Let's give a few minutes to see if he can log back on. I think you're on mute.
Samir,
you're on mute.
Great, apologies. I think I was disconnected for a moment, colleagues. So I was saying that out of the 131 countries, some of the countries have already initiated moving towards renewable energy, but this might have been a project initiative or an agency initiative, but the objective is to try to push this for all UNCTs and try to bring as many UN common premises to renewable energy as possible. The process of the transitioning of the UN premises to a renewable energy requires a few steps. The most important part of that is to understand what is your current energy consumption, how much basically energy you're consuming right now, and how can you basically transition that to renewable energy, and what kind of infrastructure and how much resources would you need basically in order to transition your premises from a traditional energy consumption system to renewable energy. So this is a 7-step process that Julia will explain to you in a high level very briefly, but What we are trying to do with the countries that are chosen amongst the pilot projects or proof of concept project, there's a funding available that we can support your UNCTs with that funding to initiate the first part of this renewable project in your country and for the UN system in your country. Priority will be given to the premises that are common premises or UN houses, and then we can also look into other UN premises or UN agencies premises and see what we can do for those in case if they are not able to be part of the UN houses at the moment. The funding will be focused on the first part of the project, which is identification of your energy consumption, identification of the needs for you, and then identification of the resources for you. The team will be able to work with your operations management teams and come up with a business case after acquiring certain information and from your teams to come up with a very professional business case to tell you what is it that you need in order to transition to a renewable energy infrastructure and how much do you need. The outcome of this pilot project is going to be this business case, but that business case would enable you and your UN country team at the country level to look for, let's say, local resource mobilizations, either through the agency's cost share or through local donors, or maybe agency HQs would provide some sort of funding to support transitioning your country from a traditional energy system to solar or to renewable energy system. Or here at the headquarters, we are also trying to reach out to some of the member states and parties that are interested to support renewable projects for the UN to see if we can attract some funding to then implement the second phase of the project, which is implementation of the renewable in your country offices. So that's basically the concept around it. There is a limited funding available for this. You will be hearing more from Julia now that what is this project steps and which steps are going to be part of this first phase. And then we will talk a little bit about the way forward. But just to let you know, this is pretty much an informal conversation right now. You're not making any commitments right now. You'll just know this, and you're a particular audience for us, a target group, to learn about this project, brief your RCs about this, and then in a few weeks, the RCs will be receiving an official communication from DCO headquarters and requesting their confirmation of interest to take part in this renewable project. Before I hand over to Julia, certain countries in this call may already have a renewable project in place. They may have either an agency or some of the agency implementing certain renewable projects at the country level for the UN system. But then we are trying to see if we can cover the rest of the agencies that may have been left behind there, or otherwise basically again engage with you and hear your experiences if your office is completely in a renewable energy setup so that you can basically inspire the rest of the teams as well. So with that, Julia, let me hand over to you and we'll take it from there. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Samir. Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. I hope you can all hear me well. Just before I start, let me quickly share my screen with the remaining slides of this presentation. So, as Amir mentioned in the beginning, my name is Julia. I'm a green energy engineer from the UNDP ITM Green Energy team. I have also here present in this meeting some of my colleagues. And as Amir mentioned, the idea of this presentation and this meeting now is to provide you with a high level, but also some detailed information, maybe a recap in case you have attended some of our previous webinars on the 7-step process for solar implementation and renewable energy production that you can see here in this presentation. So the general idea is to informally go over the main objectives and the main benefits of this process and the different steps. So we can start engaging in the upcoming weeks with your country team and then start working with the ultimate goal of developing a business case to assess then the potential for a solar installation among other different green energy possibilities. So the idea is to focus this presentation on steps 1 and 2 of the process, which those will be the steps that I'll go over into a little bit more detailed. But first, I would just like to give you a very general overview of what is the 7-step process, in case you're not familiar with it, which are the steps, which are the main objectives of each step, since this is the process that we will be suggesting to apply to deploy these solar solutions in the different country teams. So in essence, the 7-step process is an end-to-end process in the sense that it covers every step from data collection in step 1 all the way into the actual implementation of the solution in step 6 and 7. This process has been recognized as best practice by the UN Sustainable Development Group for solar implementation, and then it has been successfully applied by our green energy team in several different locations. So as I mentioned, the process starts in step 1 with the data collection. In this step, we apply IoT devices to make it possible for us to assess the current situation of a given location and then build an energy load profile for the energy solution to be deployed. Once we collect all the necessary data in step 1, we have then a very solid foundation for our assessment. We move to step 2, which is the development of a business case and the ultimate result of this initiative, as Amir said. Our business case is the result of a technical, economic, and environmental analysis that we compile, and then we present to the UN country team in the form of a very detailed document to allow also for a very well-informed decision-making when it comes to optiming for the optimal solar solution to be installed in the premises. Just so we can have a better understanding of the 7-step process and how we move forward from the business case. Once the business case has been approved, we move to step 3, which is the procurement phase of the process. Our procurement process by default is a secondary bidding process in which we have different LTA holders who then have the opportunity to bid for the specific project with a technical and a financial proposal. Our team evaluates all the bids that we receive for that project, assuring as well the best value for money for this solution. And then once we define the winning vendor, we move to step 4, which is when this vendor has the opportunity to go on site and to carry out a very detailed site survey where they can gather all the missing information they need to design the system. Step 5 is when the vendor submits the final technical design, which our team also cross-checks to ensure the compliance with all the technical requirements for the quality of the solution. And then step 6 is when the vendor installs, tests, and commissions the system. Finally, step 7 is carried out for the operation and maintenance of the installation. So, as I mentioned before, since the idea is to focus and explain a little bit more detail for steps 1 and 2, I'm going to now show you some slides and some detailed information about these 2 steps. First of all, when it comes to step 1, as I said, this is when we assess the energy requirements. So how much energy we actually need to provide with the solar installation based on the consumption of the country team that we are working with. Here we are proposing an energy to implement a service line that is called the Energy Consumption Measuring and Monitoring, or in short, ECMM. And this service line is based mainly on the use of different IoT devices, so Internet of Things devices, that we use to monitor and to analyze the electricity consumption and to also propose energy efficiency measures when necessary. There's a common saying to explain a little bit the context of step 1 and this ECMM service line that states you cannot manage what you cannot measure. And this is especially true when it comes to energy consumption. We believe that UN country teams who actually understand their energy use, they're in the best position to then design and implement what's needed to save energy and therefore saving money when it comes to energy consumption, because from there on, they would actually understand the amount of energy they are using for what purposes at any given time. So the continuous monitoring of this electricity consumption allows an office, for example, to identify the areas where the biggest share of energy is actually used and possibly in a wasteful way, and then start thinking about applying some measures to reduce this energy consumption. This can also serve as supporting information for the decision-making process when it comes, for example, to taking advantage of peak tariffs or to reduce the peak demand charges. So, for example, with the data collected with these devices, we can start identifying the highest hour of energy consumption in a day. And then in case the specific location has a higher energy cost for the specific hour, some measures can be suggested to change this consumption to a time where the electricity costs are a bit lower, for example, therefore reducing the total energy consumption and related costs with it. This data can also support in identifying any kind of outdated equipment, which can be the base to implement some energy efficiency measures. So, for example, if the IoT sensors that we install are measuring a subline that is connected to only a certain number of ACs, and then with the results that we monitor, we identify a much higher energy consumption that would be the consumption that is standard for these ACs, it could possibly mean that the equipment is outdated and is actually consuming way more energy than it was supposed to. So with that result and with that data, we can actually propose, for example, to change those air conditioners to more energy efficient ones. So the idea of this proposal and this collaboration for this pilot project is that this step 1 and ECMM service line would be the very first step to the implementation of these solutions. So we can start measuring and monitoring the electricity consumption to establish a baseline for the renewable energy installation to be deployed at the premises, and also as a baseline for identifying any kind of energy efficiency measures that can be applied in the future. The core of this service line and our step 1 is not only to collect the data, but then to be able to have a possibility to display this data in some kind of real-time electricity consumption data portal, and then to visualize the energy consumption trends. So this practice also allows us to detect, as I said before, when the energy consumption is unexpectedly higher or lower than usual or than to what was expected, and then to manage and optimize the energy consumption from there, rather than just accepting it as a fixed cost that comes in a monthly basis that we don't really understand maybe what's behind and how we can improve it. So these IoT devices, they are basically some energy monitoring sensors. You can see here in the presentation a screenshot of one of these devices that we use, an example. They are basically these clamps or these sensors that can be installed in the electrical network. And from there, they start monitoring the energy consumption as well as possibly the quality of the power provided. And then the data that is collected through these devices is sent to an online portal. Then in this portal, we can see this data in different time resolutions. So we can see, for example, the energy consumption in every 15 minutes, every hour, in a daily basis, and so on and so forth. And this portal, it's an online portal that can be accessible to both our team and the country team with a username and a password for monitoring and for consultation at any given time. And then finally, the general idea, as I said, is that this data that we collect with these sensors can be used as a basis to provide the energy assessment for the different green energy solutions, such as the implementation of the solar installation. When it comes to the implementation of the service line, this practice has already been implemented in most of UNDP country offices and many other UN premises, including different UN houses and different UN agencies across the world, as we can see here in this screenshot of our dashboard. Our team has a very solid experience when it comes to supporting the installation of these devices and throughout the monitoring phase of this service. This is also a very big scope of our work. The key aspects of the implementation of this service cover, first of all, the definition of a specific package that would serve the country team's needs, as of course this depends on the number and the size of circuits to be monitored, which of course also our team can provide all the necessary support to define this package. And then the physical installation of the sensors, it actually follows the basic do-it-yourself principle. So it's a very simple process. It takes usually not more than 1 hour, for example, for a standard package to be installed. But then, of course, our team is very ready and available to provide all the necessary remote support that is needed to install the sensors. We have guidelines, we have manuals, and we can always be available online to provide a step-by-step guidance when it comes to the installation of the sensors. And then here, I would like just to show you a brief proposed timeline for this process when it comes to the step 1 of the solution. So as you can see, the major part of the implementation of this practice actually takes only a couple of days if we exclude the necessary time for shipment of these devices all the way into the country office. And then the measuring and the monitoring of the solution is actually done during a little bit of more extensive periods of time. So usually 1 or 2 months will be necessary for us to actually have a reliable data to start working in our business case. The steps of the implementation are basically these ones here presented. So first we start with the initial engagement between the country team and our green energy team with the colleagues from BOSS to kick off this practice. Once we define this collaboration, we can follow with the definition of the specific IoT package that will be needed with the number and the sizes of these sensors. And then the shipment of the package takes place, which in normal circumstances can take between 2 and 3 weeks. And then once this equipment arrives on site, the very next step would be then to do the installation of these sensors. We can estimate 1-2 working days to do it. And then after all these necessary actions take place and the sensors are up and running, the data collection period starts. So as I said, after 1-2 months of the operation, that we consider to already have solid enough data to start working on a load profile and then identifying the collected information on the energy use of the country team and knowing more or less how it's going to be our energy requirements for the solar solution. Now, in some particular circumstances, in case the remote assessment is not sufficient to determine the energy requirement or some site-specific information, we also have a service line that we can propose that it's called the Energy Assessment Mission, which is carried out by one of our engineers or a team of engineers from our team who can go on site to collect the necessary information for the solar solution assessment. This mission can also be complemented by a training service on green energy solutions that it can be very useful to develop and strengthen local capacity of the UN country team on, in general, the 7-step process and also how to implement sustainable energy solutions. In this case, because of the current situation that we are experienced when it comes to COVID traveling restrictions, as well as we are constantly trying to reduce all unnecessary travels. We can also consider a virtual assessment if that's necessary, if that's the case. That would have, of course, to be discussed in a case-by-case basis because there's some external factors to be considered for that matter. But just to give you a general overview of what this consists. So basically, as I said, the assessment consists of an energy audit that is performed by one or a team of engineers from our green energy team that can go on site on a mission to collect all the relevant data to design the optimal solution for the solar installation, as well as to perform an energy audit. So between the main tasks that are carried out in this assessment, this engineer who's on site can be responsible, for example, for the installation or for reviewing the installation of these energy meters. So the IoT devices presented, for reviewing the electrical system and the single line diagram, and maybe identifying some possibilities for improvement when it comes to energy consumption, for analyzing the consumption patterns in terms of the electrical appliances. So how the air conditioners are used in the premises, how some quick wins and improvements could be suggested for energy efficiency, as well as for collection of the site survey information that we need. So the on-site information that we need to design our solar system. When it comes to the training, it's also a service that we offer along with the audit mission, as I said. It basically covers this 7-step process into a lot of more detail than what I'm doing now. It goes over each one of these steps, how they can be implemented, what are the objectives, how do we approach when it comes from a project management perspective as well, how do we approach this system all across these different steps. And it also takes a hands-on approach on how to develop a business case and to size a system. So it's very much focused as well on the tools, on the software that we use, the equipment, and the best practices that we apply in our projects and our systems to design and implement a solar system. Just when it comes for this collaboration with BOSS and the country teams, which we're talking about today, we are still evaluating and defining which activities and devices would actually be included in step 1 for the development of the business case, as well as it's dependable on the available funding, keeping in mind, of course, that the ultimate goal for now is to measure and monitor the electricity consumption of the country teams and to have as an end result a very comprehensive business case for a solar installation. So quickly coming back to the 7-step process, just as a recap, once we have all the information that we need in step 1, and we define that we have a very solid foundation there, we start then working on the business case, moving down to the step 2 of the process. As I mentioned, our business case is a technical, economic, and environmental analysis that we develop, and then we can present to the country team to allow for a well-informed decision on the solution to be acquired. So you can see here a screenshot of a previous business case that we have developed in the past. Under normal circumstances, we present this document with 1 or 2 different options that can vary, for example, in terms of the total required investment for the solution, the size of the solution we are proposing, as well as the components of the solution. And then in the document and as well in meetings and so on, we can provide all the necessary support and all the necessary information to support the country team in defining what would actually be the best option to go forward to address the needs and the expectations of the country team. For us to develop this assessment in our business case, we use then the data that we have collected from the IoT devices in step 1, and we can use this data in optimization software like Homer and PVSOL, which are the 2 main software that we use for the design and optimization of the system, and they are very much aligned with the software that the vendors that we work with also use for the design of their own system. So we also ensure in this process here that we are aligned with the work of the vendors and the work that will be carried out through the implementation of these solutions. Just to give you a very quick overview of how we do our business case, what kind of tools we use to design the systems and optimize them. Homer is a software that we use for system design and optimization of the different components. So with this software, we're actually able to run different simulations and model different scenarios in a very technical perspective to optimize the size of the solar system that would actually meet the energy requirements that we need for that specific premises, and also the information that we have collected in step 1. We can see in the screenshot here presented in the upper left part of the screen. With Homer, we can find it provides us with some simulation results in terms of how the energy would actually be produced with the solar installation once it's installed, the different sources of power that will be playing a major role throughout the day and throughout the whole year. So, for example, we can see if the solar energy would actually cover the total energy requirements, the total load from the country team, if at any specific given time or day the generator will be needed when, for example, there's a grid power cut and the solar system is not able to meet the energy requirements, and so on. So it provides as close as possible a simulation of how the new reality would look like once the solar installation is finally installed. We also use another software for our business case, which is called PVSOL. This is the one that we mainly use for shading analysis and to assess the total PV capacity that can be installed in that specific premises. So also, as you can see here for some screenshots that we provided in this presentation, with this software, we can actually simulate in a 3D model version the different buildings and structures of the compounds that we are analyzing, and then analyze the different options that we have to install the solar panels. So with this, we can assess, for example, the total capacity of solar panels that can be installed, as well as analyze the possible obstacles present in the premises that could cause any kind of shades to our PV panels, which wouldn't be ideal. So in case there's a very big tree nearby or a neighboring building that could cause any kind of shades to the solar panels, we definitely need to take that into consideration, and that's the software that we use to find the optimal location to install these panels, basically. And then finally, when it comes to the economic and environmental part of our business case, we use some in-house developed tools to assess these financial aspects of the project. So, for example, based on our comprehensive database of previous projects, we can assess an estimation of the total investment that will be required for that solution, an estimation of the payback time, so how long it would take to actually recover that investment, based as well on the annual savings that we are expecting to get from the solar installation, and the fact that we wouldn't be spending so much money with purchases from the grid or from the diesel generator, for example, as well as some environmental aspects, such as the estimation of how much CO2 emissions reduction we can get as a result from the solar system. So that was it from my side. I hope I could give you a better overview of what is steps 1 and 2 of our process and what we are proposing in this collaboration. I can also send some links here in the chat as soon as I finish for you to take an overview of some successful projects at UN houses we have had in the past that are up and running. And I'll give the word back now to Zamir. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Julia, for that great presentation, and colleagues, I hope that was informative for you. Just to come back to the practical elements, is what is expected from your teams in this case, and what will be taken care by Julia and her team, and from the DCO side is the steps will follow this. We will be reaching out to your offices formally through the DCO headquarters, asking for confirmation of the UNCT's interest in implementing this pilot project for your countries. The team will work with you to determine which common premises is the most suitable and which one is basically the choice of the UNCTs to be assessed for this renewable project. You will not be engaged in any ways in terms of like funding and payment and all. This will be a project that will be managed between the DCO on behalf of the UNSDG and UNDP team. So the financial arrangement and all will be managed centrally. But what will happen once we identify the premises in your countries, and once we have the confirmation from your country team, and the RC would most probably would confirm that interest on behalf of the UNCT or the representatives in the premises that we are targeting, then your operations management team will need to assign a dedicated task team on this to work with the UNDP team that will be working on behalf of the UNSDG, of course, so that they can then communicate on how to get these IoT devices, the ECCM devices, how should they install it, and how should they work with Julia and their team until they have all the necessary information to build the business case for your UN country teams. Once the business case is developed and finalized, this will be presented to UNCTs, and your UNCT will have basically the right information on the resources and the requirements and the cost and benefits of implementing renewable energy or a solar system for your premises. That will be the end of the phase 1, and then the phase 2 of that will start depending on availability of funding, either through your local cost resource mobilization efforts, or through the corporate or headquarters-based resource mobilization efforts that will put in motion at this end. So this is all that we wanted to share with you today. We will follow up with an email to you and to the colleagues that were not able to join us today, and share a recording of this as well, so that they can understand the process better, and then we'll take it from there. We'll need to see if the interest is as high as we think at your end, and then take this project forward. So let me stop here and see if you have any questions that Julia and our team could clarify. So please feel free to either put your questions in the chat box or raise your hand and we'll give you the floor. Thank you. Diego, do we have any questions coming in, or this is crystal clear to everyone?
Not yet. Let me see if everyone is able to unmute themselves. Okay, we have a hand raised. So Takalani, you can go ahead and unmute yourself. You can.
Okay, we have the devices of hydro in the building. I just want to find out, are we going to use the same devices, or you are going to send new devices for solar?
And Takalani, which office are you from? Sorry, and is this for a particular agency or for the common premises?
The common premises in South Africa, where we already installed the devices, but we don't have solar panels at the moment.
Yeah. Okay, so Julia, maybe you can shed some light in here if any additional work would be done with the South Africa office, or their business case is already in motion.
Yes, thanks very much, Takalani, for your question. We can assess, just to confirm that the devices that are there installed, everything is good with the data that they are measuring. We are currently also working with different types of IoT devices, not just the ones, the PCMMs from Hydro that you have. We also have some new ones. So maybe we can work with South African UN country team for a tailored package, let's say, taking into consideration the devices you already have, of course, so we don't have to send them again if they are fully functioning, and just see what else is needed to complete this step.
Thank you.
Thank you, Julia. Any other questions, colleagues? Okay, I find it that it's a straightforward process. So, okay, I see a question coming in. Two hands actually. What's Takalani? I think Takalani, is this a new question or the former hand?
It's a new question. You have mentioned that there won't be any cost. So I just want to find out if there will be a cost in future, or is it going through the e-store where we are able to pay for Zoom licenses, or it will be free for us throughout in future?
You're muted, Samir.
Sorry, yeah. So let me just repeat. There are two phases to this project. The first phase is to determine what are the needs of the country team in terms of the renewable energy. So that is where we are going to work with you to develop that business case, to identify the needs as well as the resources. This part is going to be free of cost to the UN system, to the country team. That's going to be centrally funded. But then when it comes to the determination of the what are basically the investments needed in order to implement the renewable energy in your country, that will be basically a joint effort. So once we know your needs, then we can work with your country team to see if there's a possibility of local resource mobilizations around this. There are member states that are willing to support renewable energy in the UN premises for the UN system. So approach will be taken either locally, or in parallel we will be looking into the kind of corporate or headquarter-based resource mobilizations to see if we can support the financing of the phase 2 of the project, which is implementation of the renewable system in these premises. I hope that clarifies the question, Takalani.
Yes, the third question is, what will happen if we are relocating to another building?
So this is going to be part of the assessment that we will have with your team before we proceed, because the investment that's going to be put in place will need to be sustained for some time. So if you're already thinking that the UN premises will be relocated from this location, let's say in a year or 2 or 3, then it might not be appropriate to put all these efforts, because it's going to take some time until you could basically implement this project in that particular premises. So we'll be working with you and with the common premises team that's in here to see if the locations that we're targeting is going to be sustainable in terms of its time or not. And if that's not the case, we can look into kind of like putting your country's requirements like in the pipeline for when you have like a better sustainable or more longer term premises. So the investment will need to be in a longer term premises. If the premise is on a long term and there is no intention of the move from that location, then obviously we'll proceed with the efforts here. Okay, let's go to Mamilo. I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly.
Okay, thank you. It's Mamelo from Lesotho. Yes, we have just finished, I think, step 1 and 2 for UNDP in Lesotho, but we're actually just concentrating on UNDP, and we have in the middle of the procurement process, we have already obtained funding for solar installation, which is actually expected to be done before the end of the year. So I just want, my question was, do we have to, for the other agencies, because they are we are in one UN building, just separated by floors, do we have to start the process from the beginning, or can we just expand on the one that we already did for UNDP and hopefully include the other agencies, so that when we do during the implementation, then everybody's covered, instead of beginning with UNDP and doing the other agencies at a later stage? Thank you.
Sorry for the background noise. I have a baby and working from home today. So yes, we will be basically trying to utilize the existing resources and the existing experience that UNDP has in this. Like if this might be the case with some of the countries where one agency may have already initiated the process for renewables. And if that process is already covering all the agencies that is in that premise, then in that case, it's already covered. We'll just make sure that we'll assess and make sure that the ongoing project is fully covering the respective requirements of the UNCTs in that common premises. If the requirements is only covering the needs of one agency, because this is already a project initiated, we don't want you to basically put all the investment on one agency, but we'll try to see if we can consolidate the needs and then cover the rest of the needs of the other agencies with your needs, and then proceed with one resource mobilization strategy and one implementation. But at the same time, we'll try to make sure that if you are already in an advanced stage, we don't slow you down. So if there is a possibility for you to implement a phase of the renewable in your premises and then another phase to come later, because you're already a few steps ahead, that will continue. But that's what will be determined after the technical teams like Julia and all that will touch base with your teams and understand the situation on the ground.
Okay, thank you.
Wonderful. So if we do not have any questions, colleagues, I think we can conclude this meeting in here, but we will be happy to touch base with you again or with your OMTs if there is a need to have a bilateral on this. And otherwise, you will receive some follow-up messages from Luis Diego, my colleague in this call, and then the formal communication on this will follow with your RC on behalf of the UNCT. Thank you very much for your time. Thank you, Julia, for presentation, and thanks, team, for your support.
Thank you very much, Samir. Thank you, everyone. Have a good day.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Good day. Bye-bye.